Welcome to the Murray City Budget and Finance Committee meeting for fiscal year 2021 on this beautiful day, and we get to be inside. Because of the current health pandemic and in order to comply with the governor's directive to stay safe, stay home, and the public health order issued by the county health department and county mayor, we have determined that an in-person meeting, including attendance by the public and the council, is not practical or prudent. Therefore, this meeting will be held remotely through electronic means. Each person is participating from a separate location. We are totally dependent upon the internet and technology to broadcast this meeting and to ensure that the public has an opportunity to view the proceedings. However, there could be a malfunction that is totally out of our control. We do not expect any issues, but want you to be aware of that possibility, so wish us good luck. All council members are present. So today, the City Council is reviewing the mayor's tentative budget for fiscal year 2021 with the department directors. If you would like to follow along, the complete budget can be found on the city website at www.murray.utah.gov. I want to sincerely thank the mayor's office, the budget officer, Brenda Moore, and all department directors for the extensive hours of work and planning that has gone into this budget so far. Because the state of the economy is unprecedented and future revenues unknown and difficult to estimate, the council has asked each department to take further reductions in their budgets. We will be discussing those items today. The City Council has had an opportunity to study the mayor's budget and has concerns having to do with revenue projections, general fund reserve usage, and staffing. We have researched historic Murray City sales tax revenue, thanks to Jan Lopez, our council director, from the Great Recession of December 2007, to see how that period affected the city. We found that the first full year was relatively mild. However, by year two, the city lost 12.5% in sales tax revenue. And Murray did not reach its pre-recession year sales tax revenue until 2015, 8 years later. I'm sure many of you can remember those days. General fund reserves are intended to compensate with emergency funding when unexpected downturns occur. In this situation, we do not know how long the current downturn may last, and we want to protect our reserves as much as possible, or at least to get us through this emergency. The council recognizes that Murray City employees provide outstanding service to both residents and businesses in our community. And the council acknowledges the experience, the knowledge, and expertise of city employees and their dedication to excellence and to our city. The council realizes the investment the city has in its personnel and the importance of retaining skilled, trained, and dedicated employees in the increasingly competitive government sector. It is our desire that no employee lose their job due to the coronavirus pandemic. Although We will discuss whether we can, in good conscience, provide compensation increases when the future is unknown. We prefer to avoid future layoffs, furloughs, and reduction in benefits by maintaining the current compensation levels. We will plan to review all decisions and look at revenues and expenses at the mid-year budget in January 2021. Okay, so let's get going. For this day, the beginning, we will start with Brenda Moore, our finance director, and she will give us a budget interview. Then after that, Kim Sorensen in Parks and Rec will have GL with the attorney's office. We'll then take a break, do Public Works with Danny Astle, Court with Karen Gallegos, Library with Kim Fong, Information Technology with Robert White, Finance and Administration again with Brenda, and then we'll adjourn right around 4 o'clock. So Brenda, do you want to take it away? Also, if there are any questions by the council, please indicate. And I also want to thank Kat Martinez, who is my vice chair and been incredibly helpful and supportive in this process, as has the rest of the council members. So, Brenda?
I think I just shared my screen. Can you see the Budget and Finance Committee review page?
Yes.
PowerPoint? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So I put it together a little PowerPoint about what I'm going to talk about. So you kind of touched on this. What will the next fiscal year bring? No one knows how quickly or slowly the economy will rebound and as the businesses are reopened. Prior to March 13th, the city was doing very well, and sales tax revenues were above budget, and that is helping offset the fourth quarter decrease. A couple minutes ago, I just got the email from the State Tax Commission, and I was a little too pessimistic about the March sales, and we are getting approximately $400,000 more than I anticipated for March. So hopefully that means that my April prediction is going to be overly pessimistic too. We can only hope. My best estimate is that the city will finish fiscal year 2020 around 20% in general fund reserves. That is if we had spent every penny of our current salaries and personnel budget, which we will not. I do know there are some openings. There are various things that generally things change throughout the year, so we won't spend all of that. And I believe that the department heads are saving more and not spending as much as I had put into the budget as our anticipated spending. So so far that is looking good too. It should be higher than that. With this proposal, we would drop to 12% of the budget as it is written. If we spent every dollar that is in the budget, which we never have as far as I know, it would finish the year at 12%. And the reason we have reserves, as Diane stated, is exactly for what we are experiencing now, to handle the downturn and the things you cannot anticipate. So our budget priorities were to preserve our workforce, keep the city services at the levels the citizens have come to expect. We have removed the transfer from the solid waste fund because that only affected single-family homeowners, and we felt that that was not, and the solid waste fund is having fund balance type of issues and had to raise their rates. So we we decided that that was not a good transfer to be making into the general fund. We have no property tax increase in this budget. On the budget review, these are the things that kind of happened once we hit the COVID-19 that we had to adjust from our original budget. General fund revenue projections decreased by $4 million. No cost of living increases for the employees. We were anticipating one because as of December, the cost of living had gone up. Capital projects approved were reduced by $5 million. The computer hardware replacement program was suspended for 1 year. That saved $190,000 in the budget. Other operational costs were lowered $90,000. The enterprise fund allowance for uncollectible accounts were increased by 50%. The enterprise fund revenues are all dependent on, or mostly dependent on weather. If it rains too much, people aren't watering their lawns, water's revenue goes down. If it's hot, power's revenues go up. If it's cool, power's revenues go down. The problem we will have with COVID-19 may be collections. We have suspended shutoffs, and that has been raising our number of accounts that are behind. Not as much as you may think it has. I'm not sure exactly the number of people, but our collection calls have been going up. And our uncollectible balances have been going up. But eventually, we can, if we put people on payment plans and work with people, we can collect these. I have increased the allowance for uncollectible accounts by 50% in each one of the funds. And what you may not know is all of our renters, we have a deposit on all of those that covers, I think, at least a month and a half, if not 2 months of their average bills. So that is sitting out there. If they do walk away and move and leave us hanging, it's not as much as it would have been. So that's why I'm pretty comfortable with the 50% increase. For power, that's $50,000. That's a lot of write-offs. They usually don't do more than $50,000 to $70,000 in a year, in a normal year. So the library, it should be fine in this downturn. Their main revenue source is property tax, and property tax received will be unaffected by COVID-19. The budget for fines collected and interest was decreased for them. So what we have done, or the changes that were made for personnel, is the medical and dental insurances went up. Workers' compensation premiums increased. That's a small dollar amount, but it's a big percentage if you see that as throughout the budget. Tier 2 fire and public safety retirement increased 7 and 6.77% respectively. 5 positions were requested. 3 were approved. An assistant customer service supervisor, that's in my department. That position would be paid for entirely by the enterprise funds. And we have been asked not to fill that immediately, nor could we fill that immediately starting in July due to the transfer over to Munis. We won't have time to train a new person while we're training ourselves a new software. There was a water distribution tech approved and a stormwater compliance inspector. Both of those are in the water and stormwater departments. 2 positions were denied, a public works maintenance worker and a civil engineer, and 2 positions have been eliminated, which was the development services manager and a DEA Metro office administrator. So just a quick snapshot of the budget, where we spend our personnel budget, 61% in full-time wages, retirement, 2% is overtime, 4% is part-time wages. All those people who are mowing the parks and teaching classes at the park center. Depending on when we open, that may automatically decrease our part-time wages for next year. Who knows when we'll be up and fully running the park center, the pool, etc. And so that's just a kind of a quick snapshot visual of where our personnel budget is spent. Our overtime budget, since you asked about that, this is the overtime budget by department. The police chief and the fire chief can both explain why their overtime budgets are the way they are, and then the budgets for power, streets, engineering, they're all there. Just kind of a visual on what levels and where they are at in their particular budgets. So this page is right out of the fund summary page on page 12 of the budget book. I did add one column. I added the change, and I didn't label it, which I should have. That's bad accounting. I added the change in the general fund, or in the fund balances. Of course, the internal service funds, we send out exactly what we budget and assess that amount. The special revenue funds, the library is expected with this budget to increase their fund balance by $600,000. That is them saving for the new library when and if we ever find a piece of property to put it on. The RDA fund will increase their fund balance by $456,000. The cemetery perpetual care fund will go up by $15,000, provided they earn any interest on their fund. The enterprise funds, water right now is in the process of increasing fund balance, probably in preparation for more projects in the future. Wastewater, their fund balance will be going down. That is anticipated due to the rebuild of the Central Valley Water. We increased their fund balance for a few years in anticipation of having to rebuild that plant, and now we are spending that money. So that is why that one is going down. The power fund, they have some capital projects they're working on. Their fund balance probably will not go down. We budget their capital projects as if they were cash and maintenance. And so then when it turns around and becomes an asset, their fund balance doesn't actually change for that expenditure. Parkway Golf, their fund balance is going down. It never goes down as much as we budget because they never spend all of their funds, and their value of their loans is changing. They don't owe as much money to the other funds. Telecom, anytime it's above 100,000, we're all happy. That's how much we gave them originally. That's the Utopia pass-through, if anybody doesn't know. Solid Waste Fund is starting to build back their fund balance. It's getting a little more positive. Approximately 180,000 of that 368 is because we did not do the transfer or did not budget the transfer. The Stormwater Fund is going to go down due to a capital project. So they're all maintaining and doing what we anticipated they would do in their long-range 5-year plans. Other items of note, I changed how the risk assessment was calculated. You're going to see a bunch of swings in the risk assessment to better reflect what the entire insurance premiums are doing by department. Before, it was all based on just liability insurance, which some departments have more property than other departments. And so I rearranged it, and all of the insurance policies costs have been allocated out, thanks to Jordan. And we're basing our risk assessment on that as opposed to just the liability insurance. What that meant was the general fund picked up some costs for the property insurance on this building and some other general fund buildings that they hadn't before. In fiscal 2020, the decision was made to lower the fund balances for both fleet and risk. And what that caused is now that we are no longer lowering the balance, there is a wide swing and a big increase in the percentage of the risk assessment. The two funds are not spending additional money. You can go look at their fund statements. They are spending a small amount due to salaries, but they are not spending what the assessment swings would kind of look like. I wanted to answer that for everybody because that's going to be on every page. So my sales tax revenue projection, I projected that we would have a decrease of 15% for next year, which was right in the middle of the county's pessimistic and optimistic projections. So with no one really knowing what is going to happen, the county came up with those two numbers and mine's right in the middle. The League of Cities and Towns analysis, depending on how you applied it, said that I have been 1% too optimistic and that we would have a 16% decrease in our sales tax. Their guess is as good as mine or yours. Anyway, so our general fund revenue by source, just to give you a picture of where we get our money. Sales tax is by far our biggest, followed by property tax, charges for services. The 7% that's in red, that is the amount currently being paid for in this budget by use of reserves. So it's a resource. We are going to lower our reserves. So anything we change and cut or move is the only thing it's going to adjust is that 7%. Is it going to become 6? Is it going to become 8? Whatever we change, that's the number that we will be adjusting. Where we spend our money by category, personnel, of course, is the largest. Operations is second. Debt service, sorry, I can't do anything about it right now. It is at 5%. And then transfers out. Now the transfers out, the majority of them are going to capital projects. That number for use for capital projects and maintenance on city facilities, that number can be adjusted up or down depending on how our sales tax collections come in. It could even go the other way. At some point, if we need to, 3 years down the road and we don't have any more general fund reserves, which I can't even imagine, we can transfer money back. So that capital projects transfers out is right now set at the majority of the 0.2 sales tax and all of the county transportation tax that must be used on road and sidewalks and transportation type projects. Where our general fund expenditures go by function, I left the Parks and Rec department by their individual little functions, and along with just so you could see kind of where our expenses are for the pool, the senior rec facilities, where we go for streets and engineering, just kind of gives you an idea. And I did put them in descending order of who spends what in the city. Just kind of and that is the end of my presentation. Let's see if I can figure out how to not share my screen now. Stop share. So does anybody have any questions? Anything else you would like me to answer as you went through? I do have some more things we can talk about page by page on the general fund or the budget book if you would like to kind of go over the general fund summary that we have on page 13. I didn't bring this and put this up. I should probably have, and I possibly could.
I think that would be helpful. Also,
you want me to put it up?
Yeah.
Let me figure out if I can find it.
I also have a question, Brenda. We keep referring to the cost to general fund as opposed to the citywide cost. what does that mean? Because there's a difference between that, and I'm sure we'll be referring to that, but I'm not real clear on the differentiation between those two.
Well, the enterprise funds operate as their own units. And so some of the things are not as important to like combine all of, if you went look by function and I added the water, stormwater and all that stuff to to where we're spending our money, all that would do is kind of muddy up where the tax dollars are going. The general fund is what's being supported by tax dollars. The other funds are being supported by fees, and they're designed on their own to cover the fees are designed to cover their expenses. So the most important part is the tax dollars. I separate that out when I start talking about the general fund, because those are where the taxes are. Those are where the police are covered, the fire is covered, and all the city administration is covered. So that's why I kind of go back and forth. I did a general review of where payroll is for the entire city and by function, because it stays the same pretty much. If we pull water and stuff out, it's pretty much the same ratio for the general fund. Does that kind of answer your question?
I think so. I'm not sure. When we come more and deal with it more specifically, then
Yeah.
may have another question, but I think that was helpful. Thank you.
So let me take 1 minute and figure out how to the best way. I got to find my budget book on PDF. Oh, mirror. Okay, now let's get this over here. Let's share the screen. I work better if I talk to myself, just so you know.
I'm just going to say this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, not being in person, trying to refer back to pages and everything. And usually we can talk, but it's a lot harder than I thought.
Oh, there we go. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me find page 13. And we're going to just talk about the general fund right now. The other department heads will talk about their enterprise funds and how they're doing. But I'm the one who focuses on the general fund revenues and this part. No one else, none of the other department directors will talk to you about this particular one. So the entire book works like this. We have their prior year actual. So we finished last year at a fund balance of 25.1%. We're looking at the very top, right? At the very top right here. Our estimated actual, I did some adjustments, lowered our taxes and our revenue down to where I think it will come in. My best guess, including lowering some of the revenues for parks, rec, all of those other small revenue fee for services.
Hey, Brenda, can you zoom in a little bit on this?
Let me give it a shot.
Sorry.
How's that?
That's better.
That's better? Okay. So I went through and lowered the revenues because you can see it's now 4 million-ish or 3.6 million less than the amended budget from the previous year or from the current year. We also, I lowered my expense amount that we're saying that we are going to spend. I don't think we're actually going to get up to this point, but we could. So I lowered that. And then as part of the revenue lowering, the transfer to the capital projects will also go down. They're a function of each other because of the transportation tax and the 0.2 sales tax. So my anticipation is we finish the year at 20.2. Hopefully that's worst case scenario. And then the budget for 2021 is right here. And the way it stands, we will finish the year at 12.1%. So that's kind of how that goes. The 4% that you have asked us, personnel only so far has only gone up 0.21%. That includes all of those changes in retirement, insurance, etc. We have already lowered operations by 8%. The additional 2% that you had, 4% that you had requested, if it went straight across the board, would lower that by $409,000, that $10 million. Do you have any questions about this particular thing and what it's kind of showing us? If you go back, let's go back one page to the general fund and the capital projects fund. They're interrelated, which is why they are grouped together. Because technically, if you think about it, if we didn't spend the capital projects fund on capital, we would, at the end of the year, instead of having a $5 million reserve, we would have a $10 million reserve. We do need to spend it on capital. We need to buy a few cars. We need to maintain our buildings. We need to do other things. But those two work in concert with each other. So the general fund revenues pages, let's see if I can get. Here's where you're going to see where all of the revenues have been lowered. Some of them have actually been increased slightly because we've been trending way ahead for multiple years of what we have been budgeting, but they're usually small numbers, small types of revenue. We don't budget for any intergovernmental revenue except for the DEA reimbursement. So that's why they're all zeros. Except for, I don't know how I left the MPG grant we know that we're going to get, and the state liquor, we know that we will get that one. So that's just line by line where we're budgeting our revenues. If you are going down to page 5, do you have any questions on this particular page? Most of them are best guess. Planning and zoning fees is a new category, by the way. We haven't had it on its own line. It's been mixed up in miscellaneous revenue for years, and we decided to start tracking it. So that's why it's brand new and is 100% change. It's not that we're increasing revenue. We just moved it from miscellaneous to its own line. Intergovernmental charges for services. There are a couple. The animal shelter. We'll be talking about this, but our contract is up, and the new animal services contract includes them renting the building from us, and that's where this increase right here comes from. And then if you look at the Park Center aquatic fees, it's up 1,900%. That's due to how we have changed how we do swim lessons. when we get back to swim lessons, instead of private people coming in and just paying us a small fee for using the pool, the patrons now pay us, and then we pay the swim instructors. So for these individual type lessons, we now have an expense in there where we have to pay the instructors. So our part-time wages went up, and it was offset by the revenue right here. Same with the MAC fees. We've started running the Murray Aquatics program ourselves instead of having an outside service do it. So they pay us the fees, and then we transfer those fees to some of it goes to the Red Cross, some of it goes to other swim organizations, but that's where that revenue comes in. Fines and forfeitures, you can see I've lowered that. Hopefully I've lowered it enough. At some point, we'll get back to writing speeding tickets and going to court and collecting fines for various other things. Our miscellaneous expense, I've lowered a bit, and our interest rates tanked. It's going to go from $200,000 to $50,000. I lowered those in all of the enterprise funds too. That's projecting that we have a 0.5% interest rate. We'll see. And then these are the transfers coming into the general fund through the RDA sends us money, and then these three, the water transfer, the wastewater, and the power transfer, are the transfers that we notice and that we will have a public hearing on. Power's gone down a little bit because we have lowered the some of the revenue estimate a little bit. Well, that's the effect of the increasing their allowance for doubtful accounts. So, any questions on the revenues? My projection for the revenue lost on sales tax personally is as good as guess as anybody's out there. We don't know. This is a different beast than the 2008 recession. In 2008, there was no money to lend. No one had any money that they couldn't borrow to buy a car. You couldn't. People weren't spending. People are still spending. They're just spending on Amazon right now. And from what I hear, the car dealerships are doing less business, but they are doing business, and they have money to lend if you want to buy a car. I think as soon as some of the restaurants start coming back online, which they are, and they seem to be surviving, some of them, we just don't know how fast people will get back to spending money like they used to. Judging from how fast the traffic picked up once they said you don't have to stay at home as much, I'm guessing they're going to be back in the restaurants as soon as we're able. I know I'm looking forward to sitting in a restaurant at some point. So who knows? I don't know what next year's going to bring. I do know we will be watching it constantly.
Brenda?
Yes.
Diane, is it okay if I ask a question? Or not a question, a statement?
Yes, just, of course. Please do.
Thank you. I can't see anybody, so it's hard. Anyway, maybe if we took that down now, but Brenda, I think that's correct. I mean, I've noticed in the housing market that has not suffered at all. And I've talked to several mortgage companies, several real estate companies, brokers, that they're in no fear as similar to 2008. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, and some of the other things, yes, we have 14% unemployment. That still means that 86% of the people are employed. And the 14%, there are a lot of them that are job attached. All of our part-time people, in fact, I know a lot of them have applied for unemployment, and they're job attached. As soon as we open the park center, they will be back working. And as soon as we reopen the senior rec center, they will be back working. So there are a lot of people that are job attached. And as soon as we open, they will go back to work. So it's just how fast things get open. And if people keep doing what they're supposed to, which seems to be what's happening, then maybe this is a short-term thing. It will take a while. It will take a long time to make up for $4 million in lost revenue or $3 million or whatever it turns out to be. The good news is I don't think I told
Brenda?
you this. I know I told the mayor that, I did. I did mention that I was overly pessimistic for the March sales. So let's hope it works for April. Yeah, somebody started to say something.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the hard thing with the timing of the budget review is we're only a week in to being in the orange phase. And so it just feels like there's so many unknowns as you've mentioned. So with that, I think there's a lot of things that I would like to consider and then reconsider at the mid-year review. One of those being back on page 4, and that was the possible suspension of step increases until we can reevaluate at the mid-year budget review. Is that something, Jan, we can put on to look at?
Yes, I'll add it to the contingency list and we'll discuss further on Friday.
Thank you. Just the priority being, keeping everyone employed if things don't get better faster. And then hopefully, I'm just very pessimistic. Hopefully that's the case, but just I'm very concerned to raise, seeing all the cities surrounding us, putting freezes on everything and making sure we can protect our employees. Thank you.
And I would like to, it'd be wonderful. I hope we get to hear from our department heads how they feel about the step increases, because I have a lot of faith in our department heads. I've been here 8 years and I don't know anything like they do. So I'd look forward to that too.
Can I ask a question on that as well? Does that
Sure.
438,855 for the step increase, does that include the roll-up taxes and all the increase in pension, things like that, or is that built into the benefits section?
No, that does not include, that is the straight cost of the salary increase.
Okay.
Of course, retirement would go up. The retirement would go down a little bit if you don't do them. The Social Security would go down a little bit if you don't do them. It's a long process to figure out that net effect.
Oh, I can imagine.
But I can, by Friday, I can probably figure that out. The net effect on the general fund is a little trickier to calculate, but because some of the general fund expenses get allocated to the other departments as administrative fees. But I can give you a rough estimate on what not doing the step increases would save.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brenda. It's almost 1:15, so I'd like to continue on unless there are some other questions for Brenda. Okay, thanks, Brenda. We'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Now let's go to Parks and Rec with Kim Sorensen. And
Hi,
Kim,
Council.
if you
Go ahead.
let us know what pages you're on, I would really appreciate it.
All right. So is there a process that you want to go? I've got the seven questions for today's meeting. Would you like me to start with number 1 and then go through to 7?
Perfect.
Okay. So the first question asks us to review the financial report from March and talk about the unspent funds. So in the Parks and Recreation Department, the total for uns about $460,000. The reason for most of these is because the park center's closed, senior recreation center connected.
Kim, we're not hearing you. I think there's too many mics.
Can you hear me now? Okay. You want me to start over? Okay. In the environment, our total unspent that we're projecting is about $459,000. The majority of this comes from the Park Center, the Recreation Department, the Senior Recreation Center, and some from the Arts and Culture. And the reason for that is we're closed, we're not offering programs. And then some of the other comes from the mayor. We have worked with the mayor over the last couple of months to save where possible. I am prepared to go over each one if you would like to go over each division.
I think we're good with just the total. Jan, did you want him to go over each piece or each division, or is the total enough?
I think what you guys wanted was just a total of what we thought unspent budgeted money would be, and I'm fine with that total if that's what you think it is, Kim. 459,000. Do you feel like
is the estimate? And that is based on the fact that we're not going to open the Park Center. We're not going to open our programs until after July. Okay. And then the golf course, which is an enterprise fund, the estimate unspent there will be $7,000. Is small amounts throughout different line items.
Could you repeat that number, Kim?
The golf course fund, the estimate is $7,000. And that's $3,700 from superintendent and $3,300 from the golf pro. Your next question was about the CARES Act, and Robin from HR will talk about that at her time. Was how much travel and training budget is critical to maintain required certifications and license renewals. And our total for the Parks and Recreation Department is $7,000. And I'll break those down for you. This comes $4,000 from parks, recreation's $1,000, golf superintendent's $1,000, and golf pro is $1,000. And if I could talk a little bit about that, Diane, this takes, if you add all of our travel and education money from the Parks and Recreation Department, it's fairly small. And when we took this away back in 07, 08, it really had a big impact on especially our maintenance operations, because what we do in the cemetery and the parks and even the golf maintenance is we generally hire younger, unskilled labor, and we use training throughout the year to teach them how to better do their jobs, and they become better employees. So anyway, it made a big difference in 07, 08. And I'll give you some examples. We get all of our employees pesticide certified, how to maintain ball fields. We have several employees that are certified playground instructors. Anyway, we would lose that. So any questions on overtime on training and education?
Kim, what was the full amount and that was what you need, correct?
Full amount is $7,000, and that's just to maintain our certifications.
Okay.
That's all we.
No out of state.
Okay,
Okay.
that's good.
And then Okay. The next question you have is, what would you cut if asked to decrease operations by 4%? And again, I'm prepared to go through them line by line. Creation department would be $125,100.
Kim, you're
Would
cutting
you
out.
like me to go by division?
You're cutting out also. Where are you at? What is your page number?
So I'm not on a page. I'm on you. We have to decrease operations by 4%.
Okay, so you're not going line by line then.
No, I was going line by your questions that were asked.
Okay.
Okay, so you're going to go by division on that, Kim?
So you want, okay, you want me to go over each division?
Just by
Okay.
division, that'd be perfect.
That's
All
page
right.
52.
Well, you're asking to go through division by division with the 4%, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So like, I'll start with page 52. That's the Parks Department. And the Parks Department, their cuts would be $35,000. 4,000 would come from training and education. 1,000 would come from small equipment. 1,000 would come from software support, and 29,000 would come from utilities. The one that you should be most aware of that would be the most impactful in parks is utilities. This would mean that we would water less. Now, if we have a rainy year, that's not so bad, but if we have a warm year like it looks like this year is going to be, that means that we'll have grass that won't be as healthy and yellowing grass. So just be aware of that. The next one is Park Center. And Park Center would cut $20,700. This would be $2,000 from overtime, $3,200 from travel and training, $2,500 from uniform supplies. Uniform supplies, this would mean that we would make sure that employees have name tags. They wouldn't necessarily have shirts on them with our logo, distinguishing that they're employees. Sports equipment, $11,000. This would impact maintenance and repair of the equipment in the Park Center. And then postage at $2,000. And then moving on to recreation. Recreation would cut a total of $14,100. This would be
Kim, can I stop you real quick? And so, because I'll never remember. Are we going to get a copy of all this?
The mayor has a copy of everything that I'm talking about, and he will send it to you after the meeting.
Okay, let me ask you just real quick, if Diane, just real quick on postage. You cut by 2,000. What does that prohibit you from doing?
We'll use emails and social media, which is what we're starting to do anyway. That's
Okay.
not a big impact.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, recreation, 3,000 from overtime, 3,700 from training and education, supplies 4,000, postage again 2,000, and professional services $1,400. This will impact some of our recreation programming. We may have less games. We may not have shirts or trophies for everybody, but so there will be an impact. Senior Recreation Center, the total there cut would be $21,300. This would be $1,800 in meals, $100 in programs, $2,000 in special events. So there will be an impact here. We would definitely not have Oktoberfest. Tricia's chosen Oktoberfest as one of the programs that we would cut. Is it impacts the seniors less than other events. It brings in more of the community at Oktoberfest and would impact seniors past. We would also, and then there would be some small programs that would have to be cut to make these deductions. Cemetery is a total of $4,200. That would include $1,300 out of travel and training, $2,000 out of building maintenance, $900 from equipment maintenance, for a total of $4,200, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at the cemetery's budget, it's small, so this deduction would impact the maintenance of the grounds. Outdoor pool, they would cut a total of $4,300. This would be $3,300 on supplies and $1,000 on equipment. And it would just increase the level of service and maintenance of the pool a little bit. Arts and history, we would cut $8,200. Lori is not sure what she would eliminate, but we would have to either deduct or eliminate one of Lori's programs, one of the cultural arts programs. Facilities would be a total of $17,300 deduction. Travel and training, $5,000. Buildings and grounds maintenance, $4,400. Professional services, $3,900, and supplies, $4,000. And facilities is similar to parks and cemetery, golf grounds. If we have a good year where everything works without breaking and we don't have a lot of repairs, we could get by. But if we have a year with a lot of repairs and problems, then we would be coming back to the council and explaining why we would need additional money. So the total for Parks and Rec, again, is $125,100. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll go to golf course, which again is an enterprise fund. Now, golf courses, it's really difficult to deduct operations from the golf course, and I'll explain why. The golf course superintendent is his deduction for 4% would be a little over $7,000. Travel and training, $800. Fuel, $1,700, and Dave is projecting that fuel costs will be lower next year. Small equipment, $150. Buildings and grounds, $4,500. It's that buildings and grounds that become difficult. If you know the level of maintenance, I think in our parks and in our golf course, they're quite high. And if we take money from the golf course, that means there's less fertilization. There's less weed spraying, and if you have your own lawn at home, you know that if you let your grounds go or your lawn go, it really costs more to bring them back up to speed, especially if you take in if you consider the amount of time that it takes. So, Golf Pro tuition reimbursement $2,000, travel and training $1,500. Soft goods, $4,600. And as John looked at this, for a total of $8,100, as John looked at this, his budget is difficult to deduct. He's suggesting soft goods. Well, let me explain to you. Soft goods are the apparel that he buys for the pro shop that he sells to the public. So if he buys $4,600 less in apparel, that means he's selling about $9,000 less in sales. So golf is one that's just a little different animal, and it's tough to make cuts without big impacts. Any questions on that?
No, 4% seems like such a little bit, but boy, it has big impact, doesn't it?
If you start looking at it with a microscope or a fine tune, all of the divisions that I worked with last week, they were struggling. They were struggling with it, especially when it's off operations. So, all right. The next question I'm sorry, Diane.
Okay, what page are you, if you just
So I'm still going down on your 7 questions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the next question you ask is to analyze overtime to determine if this line item can be decreased. Be prepared to discuss and provide an estimate of amount. So if you look at the Parks and Recreation's overtime, it's not very high. If we were to eliminate overtime, I'm just going to talk about a couple of areas. Let's talk about the parks first. So the parks overtime is $35,000. Well, if we eliminate overtime, right now we're not paying overtime, trying to save money. Well, yesterday was Mother's Day. We have employees working yesterday, and to give them comp time when they work on Mother's Day is unfair. So we'll pay them for yesterday. And that is the way that it is 6 months out of the year. We have people working Saturdays. We have people working Sundays. We have with graffiti in the valley in Murray, we have a policy that we remove that graffiti within a 24-hour notice. We have our employees also plow snow. So it's not unlikely that a person could be called out at 4 a.m. in the morning to go and plow snow. And if we're not paying them overtime, instead we're giving them comp time or we're telling them to go home early, you can imagine the phones at 4 a.m. don't get answered. And it also impacts morale, I think, more than we're really saving. Now with recreation, with the park center, their overtime budgets are very minimal, and that it pays for the 4th of July programming that they do. Our cemetery overtime pays for our cemetery staff to work later in the day for burials, and then also to come in on Saturdays for burials. So when they come in, we charge a fee for that, and the fee is more than the overtime that we spend. So any questions on overtime? Okay.
Kim,
Yes.
so overtime is higher during the summer months versus any time of the year, right? Is that what I'm gathering?
Exactly. Now, Rosalba, there are some years that if we get a lot of snow, especially in the parks and cemetery, there are some years that our overtime budget doesn't cover what snow removal we have, and they do a great job of adjusting that for the weather conditions. But you're right. Summertime is consistent. We have someone working every day, 7 days a week. Right now, we have two employees working on Saturday and Sunday. And unfortunately, with COVID-19, we are cleaning our restrooms twice a day. So they're working most days 7 or 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday. And I think the employees are really good, and they understand we're in a different situation right now, and we're giving them a day off during the week to cover that, or we're giving them comp time. That impacts our operations, and you can do that for a while without impacting morale too bad, but not for very long. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, do you want me to go through our budgets division by division, or?
Okay, now just the CIP projects.
Okay. Well, let me get to the CIPs, and I'll tell you what page they're on as well, so you can follow along.
Kim, are you putting that up on the screen or no?
No, I was going to go to the.
Okay, that's
It's
good.
page 91.
Thank you.
Sorry, my cursor's a little bit slower. Okay, if you're on page 91 at the bottom, we start out with Parks and Recreation Division. The first one listed is Pavilion Replacement Project. This is Pavilion 5. These are monies that'll roll over from this year's budget. And we have enough money to construct Pavilion 5, and we are in the process of designing Pavilion 5 and hope to order the pavilion within the next month or two, and then we'll start construction early fall, late September, early October. The second one is the outdoor pool parking lot. If you've had a chance to drive through the park within the last 6 months, I don't have to explain that parking lot. It's a mess. The next one is Winchester Playground. This is the playground at Winchester Park. We're asking for $60,000. The reason we're asking for $60,000 for a playground is because before the pandemic, we had turned in a grant to the Utah Recreation grant for half of the cost of the playground. Now, we believed at the time that we had a very good chance of getting that grant. We don't know now, but if we do get the grant, we would like to be ready to put the playground in. If we don't get the grant, we won't spend that money, as it won't be enough for the playground. Next one is fall material, $10,000, and this is the wood chips that we put in the playgrounds each year. And then you have a copy machine for the parks office, $14,000. We're told that our copy machine is on its last leg, and if we don't replace it soon, we won't have a copy machine. And then you have under Arts and History, Murray Theater remodel, $500,000. And let me tell you, the thought here was if we're able to get track money, which we don't know when or that will happen, we would like to at least have the design ready to go so that when that money is available, we can use it and move forward. So that was the thought there. The next one is the golf course. Replace a water heater that's 15 years old for $6,000. A fairway aerator, $32,000. This is the aerator that aerates, of course, the grounds. Dave reports that it needs $12,000 in repairs before he begins using it in the fall. So no sense in putting $12,000 into an old piece of equipment. Restroom upgrade, $20,000. If you've been to the golf course, you've seen that the doors are rusty. They're difficult to open. The interiors need attention. So that's what that is. Then facilities division. We have two supervisors currently that don't have access to a vehicle. So we're asking for one vehicle that they will share for $35,000. Facilities, we're also asking for $150,000. This is to prepare the Murray Mansion to become the Murray Museum. When you move over to City Hall, we need somewhere for our museum to find a home, and this is what that'll do is prepare that building. And then below that, $8,000 is a strainer replacement at the aquatic center. This is a basket that filters out the large debris before it goes into the filtering system of the pool. So, and the reason we need to replace that is it has holes in it and from corrosion, so it's allowing larger pieces of stuff to go through it. So, any question on my CIPs?
I have one comment on his CIP. The $300,000 for the parking lot is actually in this year's CIP also. So normally we would just roll that forward, but since it's in this budget, we won't roll it forward. So that's been actually in the works, that parking lot replacement, for 3 years. And we postponed it until water could get their building all done, and then now they're going to do it. So that's not going to actually affect this year's reserve amount because it's already been budgeted in, or this year, 2021's reserve amount, it's already been budgeted in 2020. This is just rolling it over as part of the budget process.
Thanks, Brenda.
Kim?
Okay, yes.
Let's see, going back to number 5, I'm wondering if you put fun days in the equation since I think the mayor has indicated we are not going to have it.
Yes, Fun Days was in the equation. It's minimal this year. It's a little over $7,000, $7,500 this year. The impact will be next year because with Fun Days being on July 4th, it falls under the next fiscal year. So we've already paid for fiscal year 2020 in this year's budget for most items.
Okay.
And then the last question was discuss any other concerns we may have, and I'll just answer Brett's question about the STEP plan. Again, especially with our parks maintenance and our cemetery maintenance and our golf course maintenance and even facilities, we generally hire younger employees or employees that don't have the skill sets that make them wonderful employees, because we don't hire at high wages, so we can't attract somebody that already has those skill sets. So we'll go through and we'll train those employees, and then we'll also, as they get step increases, it keeps them here. The COLA is a little different, and the COLA touches every employee. But the step increases really touch the lower level employees, the new employees, and the employees that we're trying to develop into quality employees for the city. When we had the downturn in 07 and 08, the one thing that, at least in Parks and Recreation, that we had when it was all said and done is we had employees that weren't very good employees. And the reason for that was the lack of raises, the lack of pay. We struggled to keep employees. We struggled to attract decent employees. So we're getting back to where we feel pretty good about our maintenance employees. And I would hate to lose that for the small amount that the STEP plan costs. That's my thought. Any questions?
One more thing, I was mistaken. I should have checked. The amount saved is the amount including retirement and taxes in the budget book for the step increase, for the sick pay payout, for all of those line items. It includes the retirement changes, the Social Security changes, and that kind of thing. So that's the total savings that you would have if you pulled the step plan would be $438,000.
Okay, so that's the citywide cost?
Citywide cost.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions for
Can I ask
Kim?
one thing?
Sure, of course.
Just a programming question, and thank you for the detailed responses. I feel like the first time when we did a budget review last time, we learned about a whole different piece of, where all the different money goes now that we're in a totally different place. But I read through the mayor's Murray forward together. I probably reversed those words as far as how things are going to progress, specifically with Parks and Rec. Registration always happens well before the different classes or teams or events like that. Our registration, will they be opened before certain levels are reached? Or I'm just kind of wondering how you're planning on handling that and how you expect it to impact registration and events.
Good question.
If that makes sense.
As you can imagine, our staff, the Parks and Recreation staff, talks about it daily. We confer with the mayor several times a week, and we have some plans on programs and on activities to begin. We are just waiting for that time when we're certain that it's actually going to happen, and then we'll open up registrations. We're thinking that special events, small special events, may be the first thing that opens up. So the answer is yes. We'll have registrations, and we'll have advance notice for anything that we're doing.
Hey, any other questions?
Thanks. I know it's all just a lot of wait and see.
Yeah, I wish somebody knew.
It's true.
Just thank you. That was very detailed, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks.
Hey, Kim,
Yes.
have you communicated with the county or in other cities what they are doing for the STEP program for hires over the summer? Maybe problem solving some of those, finding a different solution versus just cutting step increases in wages, but maybe just some other alternatives.
That's I did talk with the Sandy City Parks Director today. He believes that they'll continue to have the incentive. They don't all have mirror our step plan, but they have different raises as they get to different steps or areas. And yes, he believes Sandy's going to continue to do that. The county, I'm not sure what the county is going to do. They're a little more secretive than the other cities that we work with. So
The county just started their budget year. They're 6 months into it, so they have 6 months. They're not working on their budget yet. They run on a calendar, so who knows what they're going to do. They're probably not going to start for another couple months and trying to decide exactly what they're doing. So just for your information, some cities are doing layoffs, but the ones that are doing layoffs are doing it because they wanted or needed to do it before COVID hit. COVID just cemented the fact that they needed to do layoffs.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there was like a different alternative that we can look into where versus not being able to sustain them as workers without having less and then creating overtime for the work that needs to be done as well. So thank you, Kim.
thank you.
Other questions for Kim? Thanks, Kim. We really appreciate what you do, and we all think you're wonderful. So you did a great job. We really do appreciate you.
Thanks for all you do.
Okay, take care. And now we'll go with the attorney's office.
Okay, thank you.
GL Critchfield.
Council here. Good to see everybody. I assume you want me to do the same thing, which was to go through each of the 7 questions that was sent out earlier about the budget. Is that okay? Is that what you want?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you, GL.
Bet. So the first one was to review the March 2020 financial report and respond to the question of what amount do I feel will be unspent at the end of the fiscal year. And I'll go by each of the 3 divisions we have. In my city attorney division, I anticipate around $6,000 will be spent. And the reason for that is because the travel and training that was canceled since this COVID-19. I anticipate that, well, not anticipate, I think we canceled 4 conferences that probably would have ended up spending most of that. For the prosecution, I have listed there around $7,000, but I can't, the difficulty with this amount is we are contractually committed to pay for licenses for prosecutor software, and I don't know when that's going to come in. The reason I don't know is the majority of the payment or the cost of that will be picked up by a grant. And this is a grant that's been applied for by the Utah Prosecutors Association. They had one grant came through, and I think they said 150 people took advantage of that one. They've submitted for another grant, but even with the grant, licenses have to be paid and training has to be paid, and that would pretty much take up that $7,000 and then some. But I don't know if that's going to be in the next month or 2, or if it's going to be in the coming year. I don't know for sure. That's all dependent upon that grant. And then with risk, my estimate here, I had originally thought that we would probably have somewhere around 70. I think it's probably more like 50. A little hard to predict. There's some of this is professional services, and we do have several outstanding cases that are gaining some momentum. So I don't know for sure exactly what that'll be, but that would be part of it. The other part of that is travel and training was canceled, and we saved some money there. And then just in their small equipment budgets, we've just not paid, have not gotten some of the things we would have gotten. So that's pretty much it for the three divisions as to what would be unspent. The next question, number 2, is there any questions on that one, first of all, before I go on?
Yes, do you have a number
For the risk?
for the number, for number 1, what amount?
Okay, I would anticipate that would be about 50,000. And if we don't have to pay for the license of the e-prosecutor, that would be probably 63,000. 56 and 60, I would anticipate.
Okay, you're cutting out, so.
So I would, as a total, I would anticipate 56,000 and 63,000.
Okay, great. I heard that. Any questions on that for GL? Okay, GL. Number 2.
Thank you. So number 2 is the CARES Act, and that will be covered by Robin in HR when she talks to you. I think that's tomorrow. Number 3 is how much travel and training budget is critical to maintain required certifications and license renewals. So as far as the attorneys and risk are concerned, that's really what keeps us going, are these licenses and certifications. We have dues that come due once a year, and then we have continuing education credits that we have to keep up in order to maintain our licensures. So it is, for us, that's pretty critical. I can go on to number 4 unless you have questions on number 3.
Any questions for GL on 3? Okay, go to 4, GL.
Thank you. Number 4 was the 4% cut. What would be the result of that? And there's things to look at. Brenda may have to help me on this one, but there has been an allocation to our office that hadn't been before. You look on my.
If it's okay, I'm going to share my screen so you can see which page he's talking about.
That'd be great.
Diane, oh yeah, I was going to say, just mute yourself because I think the feedback's coming from your computer. Go ahead, Gio.
Thank you. I think it's down to page, I think it's page 23.
Oh. There we go. Gotcha.
Okay, so if you'll see in that right-hand column, the budget fiscal year 21, where the mouse is, there's that $89,177, which is the risk assessment to my office. If you include that, then I think the 4% amount is somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,845. And then really, if you look at our operations that you have on the screen there, about the only variable that I have, I mean, supplies I to an extent, but travel and training is really the variable. And taking that $4,800 out of there would eliminate much of our travel and training. If you don't count that risk assessment, it's still about $1,200. I think it is $1,279. And that too would have to be taken out of travel and training, which would reduce the number of conferences we could go to. That's essentially the impact of the 4% on my office.
So just so you know, the 89,000 is the risk assessment for the general fund. I needed to put it somewhere, and I needed to put it somewhere that because it hadn't been in the general fund before. I had to put it somewhere, and I had to put it somewhere that got allocated out. I couldn't put it in my department because we get allocated out at, depending on our division, at 40%, 50%, 95%, and 100%. I stuck it in the attorney because he is responsible for the risk department. And so that's why that is sitting there. And then 40% of that will go out as administrative fees. And I just needed someplace, a placeholder, and that's a brand new line due to that reallocation of the risk fund and the readjustment of how we do the risk assessment. So just so you know, that's why his budget jumped 279%. He didn't change anything in his budget numbers. They're all still zero increase from the previous year. Any questions? Kind of get that? Okay.
Now, also, please understand that does not include risk. Risk was one of those departments that you took out of the 4% calculation. And then, any other questions on 4 then? So go ahead.
Number 5.
Number 5 is analyze overtime. I don't have any overtime in my office. Number 6 would be discuss CIP projects. We don't have any of those either. And number 7 is discuss any concerns. I mean, obviously, unless you have questions, I don't have any concerns to discuss.
Okay, questions for GL? All right, GL, you got off easy, kind of.
That didn't feel easy.
I know.
No.
It's not easy for us either, believe me.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, GL. Okay, now we have a break. So do you want to take a break? Do you want to continue going? What's your pleasure, Council?
I'm going to take a 5-minute break if you don't mind. That doesn't mean we can't keep going. I can listen.
Let's
Okay, so what? Take a break. Can we take a
Let's take a break.
15-minute break and come back about 10 after? Well, we can just come back about 2:15, and hopefully Danny will be available and ready to present. And so we're to Public Works. Danny Astle. Hi, Danny.
Hello, thank you, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I'll try to go quickly through these questions. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and shoot them toward me. So if you want to start on page of the mayor's budget at page 48, that would be the streets budget to start with. So going through the list of questions. So the first question is what amounts do you think will be spent by the end of the fiscal year? In reviewing it, we think what we're going to have, all we're going to have available in that budget is about just shy of $35,000. We're spending most of that that's available to us right now with little projects finishing up and getting things done. So and that's for the street budget. The engineering budget is on page 50. And what we think that we'll have available in that budget is just shy of 19. So $18,850 is what we think we're going to have available unspent in that budget. So back to page 48 with the second question, or third question. Number 2 question is I'm just going to refer you to HR because I think Robin's prepared to talk about the CARES Act and how that relates to us. So number 3 is how much travel and training is critical and required for certifications and licenses. And it's interesting, and I'll say this several times during my sharing this information, but $12,000 is generally the minimum in the streets budget that we can get by with. Just there's a lot of local trainings. There's some local trainings that are available to our people, but there are a lot of trainings and specific training that isn't always available here. And so we usually have to travel, number one, to work with our peers in the industry itself, find out what kind of equipment is working better without having to buy it first and finding out that it was the wrong piece. And then keep up to date with the operational ideas that are out there. And there's a lot of new things that we've discovered by going to these types of trainings. It's also important to stay connected with our national organizations. And so we could get by with a little bit less, but $12,000 is about the minimum. And we would miss out on that knowledge being passed on to us of what others are doing and how they're accomplishing more with less. So on the engineering side of it, they need at least $2,500 next year to maintain the certification and licenses that the engineers have and need to keep up to date. So that would be the minimum there. So back to the streets division on question number 4. What could we cut to decrease the operations by 4%?
Danny,
Yes.
can we go back to the travel and training budget? The 20,000?
For the streets?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Is all of that critical to maintain required certifications and license?
Some of it is for licenses and certifications. The other parts is just to keep up to date with operational practices, which don't require a certification license or anything like that. So, like I said, we could probably do with a little bit less.
So about how much do you think you could do with less on the travel and training?
We could probably go to 10,000 and okay. But when we have so many guys that we're trying to train and to bring them up to speed, we're very much like the Parks Department and our training. We generally bring in people who are undertrained, and we train them up in these practices. So they need that institutional as well as practical knowledge for that type of training. So.
Right. I get that, but these are crazy times and we need to cut as much as we can. So anyway, whatever you do.
Yeah.
If I might, each department is different. And I understand Danny's department, there's in roads, there's always different mixes that could save the city money, different road base types, different all kinds of things that come out on the market that they've got to go look at and see. I know we've got to cut everywhere we can, but we could be stepping over dollars to save dimes. We've got to be careful and make sure we understand exactly where the cuts are and what they are.
Well, and again, to that is, we're talking about a staff of 25 people, 20 to 25 people there that need that same type of training, and keeping everybody up to date is not an easy task. So hopefully that answered that question for you. But yeah, I think, we could get by with a little bit less than the 12, but usually that's generally the minimum that we can get by with.
Okay, and again, these are exceptional times, so whatever you can do, we're really going to need it, I think. So, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So question number 4, on the, did somebody have a question? Oh, I'm getting some. Okay, so question number 4 is what could we decrease or in operations by 4%? And initially, we would just propose to temporarily reduce our seasonal part-time employees that we use during the summertime. If we start cutting into our operational line items, other than that, we start running the risk of not able to provide the services that our citizens are accustomed to. And on the in the engineering, it amounts to $2,224 at 4%. But again, we would propose a similar tactic there, in that we would eliminate the seasonal part-time position that we use to help our engineering division during the summertime, which would actually reduce the total amount by $3,600, so it'd be a little more than 4%. So then in our streets division, question number 5 is analyzing our overtime to see what could be decreased in our overtime. So again, overtime is just an interesting thing that we deal with, and some years we have plenty, and other years we don't, and it depends on the type of year that we have. And just about every division, and I'll talk about it as we go through the other divisions, but every division helps with it. Our street department is the leader, and they coordinate everything, and so they're the first ones out and getting things organized for whether it's snow removal or whether it's flooding or whether it's street repairs. They get called on as well to if they can't get a hold of other employees, water or sewer, they're called on to help in times of trouble as well. So that overtime, it's pretty well set where it needs to be. Again, unless my crystal ball is not as good as somebody else's, it's hard to expect guys to be on to take comp time when they're pretty well. We have a limitation on our comp time, and so once they reach that number of hours, either we have to make them take that time off, or we need to pay them. And if we expect our guys to answer the call in the middle of the night, early in the morning, whatever it might be, we need to be able to pay them that overtime to compensate them for what we're taking away from them. They get involved in everything, including the fun days, the 4th of July parade, and so so that'll be one thing off our plate this year. But there's always something that comes up: the road closures, and assisting the other city departments if they have problems, whether it's a water break or whether it's a power outage or whatever it might be. Our streets department assists them with the traffic control during those times. So they get called out for a number of things.
Danny,
Yes.
does your department get called out for snow plowing for overtime?
All of the departments get called out
Okay.
for snow plowing.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Danny?
Yes.
Diane. Okay, so going back to number 4, did you give us numbers for that?
The savings on that would be on the streets department, that would be 22,859. And on the engineering budget, they're proposing to cut $2,224 from the seasonal part-time.
Okay. Okay, and now back to number 5. Are there any other questions for Danny on 5? So are you saying basically that you can't cut any overtime?
Well, again, it's a question of whether your crystal ball or mine's any better. If we don't have that overtime available to us, it's going to be hard to get people to come out to do our plowing, do whatever it might be. And we'll talk about some of the storm drain, but what they do too is 4 or 5 times a year they get called out after hours to get ducks out of the storm drains. So you never know what you're going to get called out for. So and I would say it's going to be hard for us to cut any overtime.
Okay. How about professional services?
The professional services themselves, there is a little bit. For example, the streets division will only have $100 left in that budget this year, as we're anticipating. And professional services in engineering, we believe we'll have about 9,000 there. So there is a possibility that a little bit could be cut from there. Those are things that we get called on at different times we need a survey for this, or we need to take a look at a hazardous area. We do we have to bring in an environmental group different times. So it's hard to say whether we can or can't.
But that's $100,000.
Danny, I have $100,000 in there. Is that a transportation study that we have to do?
That on the new budget?
On the new budget? Or did I typo $1,000 into 100?
No, I'd have to look at what that was. That was one of my questions, so hang on. Should have had that out. Is that the engineering side of it?
Streets.
The streets.
Okay.
It's on page 46. Or 48, I'm sorry, 48. I have to put my glasses on.
I'd have to go back to the budget to know, to our preparation documents. I can get that answer pretty quick, but Because I'm wondering if it got,
Yeah, I'm,
is that,
Maybe we can put that on the contingency, Danny.
okay.
yeah, I can give you an answer to that real quick here. So let me just get back to those documents. When I'm done here, I can get it done. All right. So the only concerns, or you want to jump into the CIP on this one?
Okay, are there any questions on number 5 by the council? If not, then CIP is fine. And we can put the other on the contingency, and then you can have time to figure it out.
Can I ask one question? When you cut part-time people, what does that entail?
Just means that we don't bring partner seasonal on for the summer.
Are they office staff? Are they out on the construction crews or both?
They are out in the field.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, number 5. No, we did number 5. We're at 6, CIP.
You're in the six. Okay, so on the streets, on the CIP, part of the CIP is our Class C, and so that's on page 51 of your book of the mayor's budget. And so there's several things that get funded in the CIP or in the Class C road budget, and we have those outlined there. So that's where we buy our road salt, and that's where we do get money for our slurry seals, and then when we do our ADA ramp replacements each year, that's where that money comes from as well.
And you can see his budget is lowered based on our estimate of the Class C money that we're going to receive. So.
So the other part of the CIP is, so if you go back to page 91, and this is about midway, it says public services streets. We're replacing the crack sealer. And then down below that is the transportation tax money that we receive. And that's been reduced by through Brenda's calculations as well. And so those are the projects that we have on our list based on the list that we've developed over the years. So any questions on the projects that you're reading there? So that first one on the list under the transportation tax is the bridge evaluation. So over on 3rd West, where Big Cottonwood crosses 300 West, just a little north of the animal shelter there, UDOT had given us a review of that and said they think that we need to downgrade that until it gets repaired or replaced or some work done on it. So we've got an evaluation, money in there for an evaluation of that. And then additional money to complete our Hanauer Street. And then Cedar Street, so reconstruction. So we received UDOT from the TAP funds We received some money for sidewalks in there. And so the city needs to budget the rest of the money to rebuild the road as we do that as part of that project. A water line will go in that as well, but the water department's budgeted for that. And Shiloh and Woodshire, see 240,000 there, and then some overlays. We have one pretty good sized rebuild project on Blind Crest, and then overlay on Winchester from 7th West down all the way to our city limit to 13th. Any questions on those?
Any questions for Danny on the CIP? Okay, Danny, number 7, concerns that you may have.
You know, the only concerns that we would have is and I'm sure you might hear this times, back in the 2008, 2010 era, and a little bit beyond that, we were having trouble retaining some of our employees that had been with us as many as 10 years, because some of the other cities had not stopped giving increases. And unfortunately, we weren't in that position, but we lost 3 well-trained employees to other cities on the water side of things, and then on the street side of things, we lost 2 people. And so if we suspend the STEP program, I just think we're going to run into that again. We're going to start losing our trained. The money that we've invested already into people, and we're going to lose that and then have to start all over again. So that would be one of my only concerns.
Okay, if we, Danny, if we had to suspend that, we wouldn't suspend it forever, and we would certainly continue, evaluating. And the first chance we would be able to reinstitute it, we sure would. So it's, I said before, it's really our last. It just depends. If only we knew what was going on. But so I get what you're saying.
Thank you, and I appreciate the position that you're in and the decisions you make. So now let's go on to our enterprise funds. So the water division. Looking at that budget, there's 3 different sections of the water division. There are water administration, water operations, and then our metering, or meter reader operation. So between the 3 of those, we think that we will not spend as much as $378,000 roughly out of this year's current budget.
What page, Danny?
I'm sorry. That's page 99 on 100. Yeah, so 99 to page 101 actually. So the one thing about these budgets is that we definitely don't try to over budget things, thinking that we're going to be short. We budget what we believe based on history and based on what we think is we're going to be needing to do in the current year, and if we have money, we know that it's just going. We don't just go out and blow it. It goes back to our fund and we have it going forward. We try not to take it, over budget. So the first question on the water, the answer to that is we'll save about $378,000 on that one. On the wastewater one, unless you want me to answer all the questions on the water first.
That's fine, whatever works out best for you.
Well, it's okay. I can do it. So we'll just,
Yes.
Brenda will just have to keep up with me with the pages.
All right.
Okay, so page 105 to 106 is the wastewater. So in the wastewater side, in our operations budget, there's the two sections. One is our wastewater operations, and then we have Central Valley operations. And so in between the two of those budgets, we will save about $309,000 that we won't spend. The Central Valley budget, we're spending almost everything. It's interesting. This year we'll spend almost everything that we budgeted there. But of course we knew that, we planned on things, so that's why our fund, we built it up a little bit, and now it's coming down a little bit. So that's in question number one. Question number two on all of those. Well, let's see. Let's go on to the solid waste. I'm sorry. So solid waste, that's page 125. And this is a very tight budget as it is already, but we think that we won't be spending about $2,800 out of our budget. Out of that budget is what we'll not spend. And then our stormwater, which is page 123, 124. Stormwater,
I think it's 126, isn't it?
Maybe it is. Maybe I didn't write it down right. So in that one is, we will not spend on that one about $77,000 on that one. So then question number two is Robin will cover the CARES Act and what's happening with that as it relates to these budgets. All right, so let's go back to the water fund on question number two, or number three. And page 100. So how much travel and training is critical to maintain required certifications and licenses? Again, this is a budget trying to keep all of our operators. Every one of these operators have at least one license for water distribution, and some of them have water treatment licenses. And so we're trying to keep all of the, well, in addition to that, some of them actually have backflow licenses. So there's a lot of licenses. We're trying to keep them up to date and certified. So we have for about 18 people, we have a $12,000 budget, and that really is our minimum. We don't over budget that one at all either. Sometimes we run out, and in these strange times that we're in right now, fortunately, the AWWA has been doing a lot of
I've
online training.
I've earned my sick. Yeah, and
John, your mic's on.
Hold on.
Okay, so so that one's going to be difficult to cut from where we're at, but 12,000 is about the minimum that we can get by with to make sure that we have the amount of money that's necessary to meet those needs. Some of our operators, well, each license that we have to provide 30 hours in a 3-year period, but that's 10 hours a year that they have to be in a class in some sort of training. And so we even put on trainings here to try to keep that up to date too, but we still have to have guys do a little bit of travel locally here most of the time. So, but we do the best we can with that. So, from the wastewater side of things, we have 10 people there. 9,000 is about the minimum. And again, some of these guys have treatment licenses as well as licenses to operate the collection systems, and again, the hours are very similar for every single license at the level that we require them to be at. We need to provide 30 hours of class time training for that. So you can imagine if they've got a treatment license, it's 60 hours. So that's a lot of time over that 3-year period that we need to pull and provide that training. So,
Do you have a list of who's up next for training, or just, I'm sure you keep track of who needs to go forward and not?
Yeah, our supervisors have a list of training, and they keep track of the certification hours for the guys, and which one needs to, and additionally, because we don't always hire staff that is fully trained, we train them, and so they work their way up during this period of time, during a 2 to 4 year period. It's kind of like an apprentice program, and we put them through a training that's required for Murray as well as for their certification, and the certification time. The tests aren't always available locally. They don't always do them right here. They'll do them when they hold for example, the wastewater test. They only hold them 2 times a year, and one of them's in St. George. And so not everybody can go. We can't let everybody off to go and get the next level of test. And it takes them about 4 years to get that. So once they're fully certified to that high level, then we just need to make sure that they're getting enough hours. So, but during the training period, it's additional time that we have to put in, because it's study time, and then they got to go to take the test as well. So on our so that was our wastewater one. And then our solid waste. We don't have a travel and training budget in this one. So if he needs any training or anything, the superintendent usually pays for it out of the streets budget. But he doesn't. There's no certifications that he maintains. except for he does the spraying or weed spraying, and he is certified locally for that. He can just go to the health department, and that certification is done locally here. So, and then our stormwater, this one's a little bit different again because these guys do have certification licenses, and some of it is done locally, but some of it isn't. The other part of that is getting the training that they need outside of what's normal here, so that they get to talk to their peers, they get to talk to people who are using different equipment, different processes to accomplish the same type of work. So our stormwater, we're already a little bit underfunded, and so let's see. Brenda, can you go to 123? Is it 123 or 127? Stormwater.
I show 126, I think, 120 something. 126.
Okay, so go down one more page though, to the operations budget. Yeah, so it is 128. Okay. So in the travel and training there, we don't budget a lot. We ran out last year, and he needed to accomplish a couple of things. A couple of guys needed new training on one of the new trucks, and so we had to provide that, and so he bumped that up to $10,000. I think he can get by with a little less than the 10, but you can see that each year we're maxing that 6 out, and he's having to take from another operations budget to cover that. So.
Okay, so you think that maybe the 10,000 can be brought down a little bit?
We could probably, we are exceeding the 6,000 budgeted this last year. He's already had to rob some from another budget. So I would say let's try 8,000, and we could do that.
Okay. All right, sold.
But then, these are the guys, these stormwater guys, they get called out, this time of year when the flood starts. Last year was a lot worse than it was this year, but we're still waiting for the peak water to come down. Fortunately, it's been cooler, and had some hot days, but cooler. We've had cool evenings, so that's been really good. So the water's coming down a little slower and a lot less dangerous, but the possibility is still there for rain and hot temperatures still to get us. So just never know what we're going to get. And these are the guys that get called out for the ducks and the storm drain. So what can I say? Okay, so question number 4. Now, let's start with the water again. Page 99. So on that one, so there's some budgets that we felt like we can minimize. So we need that 4% adds up to about roughly $84,000. So we would be taking money from our rebates. We'd take a little bit from our professional services. We take some from our line maintenance, our equipment maintenance, our buildings and grounds, our hydrant maintenance, and then also our fluoride. And again, the year it's hard to guess what kind of a year we're going to have and whether we're going to need, if it's going to be a bad year for water line breaks. But our history has shown the last 3 years we've been maintaining at right around 40 breaks a year. So if we stay in there by keeping up with our replacement program, that number most likely will stay. So equipment maintenance, that's a guess, and that's something that we may have to come back to you and say, guess what? We need more money in our budget. But we would look in our budget to see what else we could pull that from before we, have to come to you. But those are the things that we would cut initially if we were looking at an initial 4%.
Danny? Also on page 128 on the equipment maintenance, it's up 67%.
Okay, so that's in the
Stormwater.
Yeah, so in that one, because I was back at the water budget, so let's go back to the stormwater.
Right.
So in that one, yes, and that is correct. We've got some older pieces of equipment that have failed, and it has cost us. For example, the jetting truck that they use. It's coming to its life expectancy now, but there's not enough in the fund to replace it just yet, so they need to maintain it. But the pump for that thing is almost $35,000, and so that did go out this year, so that is a big expense all at one time. So there's several things that have happened like that.
Okay.
That make sense?
I think it does.
Okay.
Can
All
I
right.
interject something here?
Yeah.
Sure. Yes, Mayor.
I just want to point out that in this wastewater fund, if you're looking for savings across the board citywide, cutting the overtime or whatever from this is not going to make a cut across the board, because the funds stay in the stormwater fund. So what you're going to do is increase the balance in the stormwater fund, but it's not really going to help across citywide if that's what your goal is.
All right. Yeah, I think it is.
Well, and the other thing is I don't think his revenue is going to drop. His collections may drop a little bit, but his revenue is not going to drop due to COVID. People are still going to buy water. They still have to pay their stormwater fees. It's based on every quarter or every month you get charged this much. They're still going to pay. His revenue has been budgeted for stormwater based on you get this many houses with this many multiplied by 12 months, and this is his revenue. So it's not, all it's going to do is increase his fund balance and not allow him flexibility when things go down if we mess with his budget lines. It's not going to help the general fund at all. Same with water, same with solid waste. The enterprise funds, their revenues are going to stay pretty much the same, unless for water, it rains a lot, then his revenue will go down. Solid waste, I can project within hundreds of dollars what his revenue will be every month based on the number of garbage cans and addresses we have out there. So that's not going to adjust a whole lot due to COVID. The homeowners will eventually pay their garbage bill and their power bill, or eventually they'll get shut off. So we could spend a lot of time and reduce his flexibility in all of these enterprise funds, but it's not going to save the city and the general fund any money. What you do with the STEP plan will affect him, because we always do that citywide. If the general fund can't afford the STEP plan or can't afford a cost of living, the enterprise funds don't do it either, even though their revenue is staying stable. So
Okay.
that's just my interjection before you start deciding how much you want to cut out of these enterprise funds. It stays there, and they will probably just come back asking for an increase so that they can buy what they need to buy and do what they need to do for the citizens.
Okay, are there questions from the council regarding any of those issues? Okay, Danny?
So with what Brenda had mentioned there, do you want me to keep talking about the 4% or what I would not spend?
Didn't you already do that? I thought you had.
Well, I did on the water. I've only got to the water so far, not to anything.
Oh,
So
okay,
there's
yeah.
the water, there's solid waste, and there's stormwater. So
Okay.
Diane, can I ask a question? Danny, do you think, I mean, I know time is of the essence, but we need to know certain things, but are you with those other, and this is just my own question, just my own observation. Do you think that it's going to be similar to what you just went through, or are there going to be other surprises that we're going to say, oh yeah, that's different?
Brett, I'm not sure I understood that question.
Well, you said you've got to go through the other two departments. Are they similar to what you just went through, or are you going to have a lot of savings that you're going to have for us?
They're less.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, they would be less. The stormwater and the solid waste funds are tighter than
Right.
the water and the wastewater. Mostly because we just barely raised those fees to adjust for those, and so the water and wastewater have been doing that, so they're a little better funded.
Okay, so if you could just give us the 4%, and I think that's good, just
Okay,
for them.
So on the wastewater side of things, we would propose to cut or to reduce a couple line items. So our trouble spot maintenance by 17,000 and our collection line by 10,000. I wouldn't dare propose any reductions in the operations for Central Valley at this point in time. We're contractually set up to fund that, and so we need everything that we're putting there. On the solid waste side, it would amount to about $61,000 would be the decrease, and there's just no way we could do that. That budget is so tight already that the most I could come up with, and maybe we could save, was about $9,000, which it's less than 1% of the budget. So just because it's already so tight. On the stormwater side of things, it amounts to about $22,000. Little over $22,000, that 4%, and again, we would propose, if not cutting anything at all, just because those line items are already so tight that if we did, we would run the risk of not having the money and then just coming back to you again and saying, okay, we need a budget opening for these things to operate off of.
So maybe we should put those on the contingency and perhaps hold them harmless. What do you think? No responses?
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I know what hold harmless means. I'm not sure. Is that what we do on the contingency? Put departments on hold harmless items?
Well, we could put it on a contingency and discuss it. Have that be one of our discussion items to determine if we want to hold those harmless. Does that make sense?
The enterprise funds, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, Jan?
I'm good.
I have it, Diane.
Great, thank you. Okay, Danny, you have anything else for us?
Not unless you wanted to go through the CIP with it, but it's just part of that budget that we're covering. So, and again, you know, maybe the last question, number 7, is just reiterate what I've said before. If we suspend that step plan, my fear is that we would lose more money in the long run just because of the training that we've already investment that we've already put in people that we have, and they will go other places. But anyway, that's my thoughts, and I appreciate the time.
Danny, both your enterprise funds, or 2 of them, have requested employees. I'm sure the council might want to know why you need new employees in water and stormwater, because I don't want to answer this on Friday when they ask.
Okay. So in the water side of things, the regulations have been requiring us to do a lot more sampling as of late and over the years. And so right now what we're up against is just the timing factor, and we've been slowly stepping up that budget to that operating budget to cover those expenses. This is one of our light years, but the one other thing that we're not doing consistently is a backflow program. We are working with it, but we're not covering it completely. And so we're kind of at risk with that one. We've seen other cities have problems by not providing the right amount of people watching it. So we need additional manpower to run that program and to manage to help with our sampling. On the stormwater side, we just went through our audit in late 2018 and into the 2019 timeframe. And from that audit, one of the things that we kind of got scolded on was not providing the right amount of regular inspections of these sites that are required to clean and maintain their sumps and different things. And so we need an additional inspector to manage that as well. The one that we have, he can manage the construction projects and everything that's going on as far as, new stuff and redevelopment and all that. But he's having a hard time getting to any of the sites that have already been done and been passed off. So we're required as part of our permit to do that as part of our program. So that's the reason for that one.
Thank you, Danny.
All right.
Okay, any other questions for Danny? Okay, thanks, Danny. We appreciate your help.
I'll get back to you with that other information. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see, we're running a little early, which is good. So is Karen Gallegos around? She's our next for courts.
Yeah.
Karen, I've unmuted you so you can.
Thank you. I was just going to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How's
Good.
everybody?
We're doing
Good.
kind of
Thank you.
I hope everyone's staying safe.
okay. Now it's up to you. So just
Okay,
And you might just want to recognize that Judge Thompson's also here.
Oh, hi, Jeff. All right.
okay, so question number one, what amounts do department directors feel will be unspent at the end of this fiscal year? Although we haven't had court since the middle of March, March 13th to be exact, and we haven't had court all of April, and we haven't had court all of May. We are still open, and people are still allowed to come to the front counter to schedule a court date, pay their fine, whatever it is that they need to do. We will go back to court and start having court. Only criminal cases will be heard starting June 1st. Starting August 1st, traffic cases will start being heard. So because of that, it looks like there'll be about a 55,000 that will go unspent at the end of the fiscal year. Because right now we're not having interpreters, we don't have a fill-in judge, we don't have transports. So there's a lot of things we don't have any training right now. It was all canceled. So there are a lot of things that we would normally have that we don't have due to the COVID-19.
Okay.
Right, that doesn't, video doesn't cost anything. So does anybody have any questions about number one?
I don't think so. Any of the council questions? I guess
No.
not. Okay.
I have two people on the CARES Act. So, number three, how much travel and training budget is, it is all critical to us. So although travel and training has all been suspended, our first one is slated to come up in September. And I don't know right now, it's all kind of in the air, and that would be with the Bureau of Criminal Identification. So it would be our TAC conference that's slated in September. That's our first one. Everything else has been canceled. I don't know it'll go through. Everything's so up in the air. However, all the training we do have, we have to take per the AOC standards. They say these are the things you have to do to stay certified as a court. So that one, there's just nothing I can do about that.
Okay. What page are you on, by the way, Karen?
I'm actually going through the list that we got from the mayor. So
Justice Court is on page 21.
yeah, I do. Sorry, I do have that pulled up, but I'm actually not in my office. We don't get Wi-Fi in my office, so I'm in the courtroom. So,
All right. Okay. Next question, if there aren't any others. Okay, go ahead.
that would take us to number 4. To decrease the operations by 4%. Do you want me to go line item, or, I can decrease about $10,000. Do you want me to tell you where I would decrease that, or?
I'm okay with just giving us that number. If the council would like to know, like you to go line by line, that's fine. So, council?
I would kind of like to know the impact of the cuts, if it would cut into your functions, or how far your functions.
Okay.
Me too.
So, sorry. Let me. Actually, where I would be cutting the most would be prisoner transports. So the state is right now we're on Zoom, but the state has something called WebEx. I'm sure you're all familiar with that as well. And so right now, like this Friday, we have a training. It's all WebEx. All of our prisoners we're doing on WebEx. So it's with the jail. It's able to also have the prosecutor involved without them actually having to come up to court. So that's where a lot of our funds would be cut, is from our prisoner transports. Eventually, the AOC is going to do everything WebEx related. And so we won't be bringing prisoners out anymore. That's what they're trying to get away from. And that's really what they do need to get away from. So with technology the way it is, they're saying that they have that slated for August, did they say, Judge? Or I think it's August that they're trying to get everybody on board using WebEx and having all the transports. And really, that's where a big chunk of my budget is prisoner transports. Whereas we're doing arraignments on video, we had to bring pretrials out. So we had to have the prisoners actually transported so that they could talk to the prosecutor. And that's what they'll be phasing out. So everything will be on video. The prosecutor will go online, the judge will be online, the jail will be online. Everybody will talk and do what they need to do, and then the judge will decide the outcome. So that's a lot where it's going to come from.
Great. Okay.
Did I answer that question?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes, thank you. I saw it on All Rise the other day and it worked great.
We don't do any time, so number 5 doesn't apply to us at all. CIP projects. I mean, I'm in a 22-year-old building. So we have fluorescent lights. I have been told that we need to slowly transition into LED. And that's what we did this year. We replaced 6 lights, and then it was slated for us to replace 6 more lights on the new budget. We had a lot of work done on our furnace that's the same age as the building. And we're just kind of hobbling that along until, something happens. Until it goes out, we're freezing and we say, hey, we need a new furnace, but no. So, but it's not really been slated. I don't have anything. It's just, we're playing it by ear on that. And so I don't really have any CIP projects, if you will, not big ones.
Okay, do you, number 7?
Well, in this time, you just don't know where we're going to go. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know what the future holds. And I think it's just something that we have to play by ear, and see where we go and make the best of what we can right now and go from there. Do you have anything, Judge, that you would like to discuss about concerns that you might have?
Or anything else in terms of the other questions?
Do you have anything that you'd like to address?
Number 7 again.
Here, I will do that.
You unmute this, right?
Yeah, on the bottom left.
Hi, Judge.
Hello. Oh, I can't see
Hi,
that.
Judge.
Hello. Is it?
You're unmuted.
You're unmuted and you're there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I think, we're in kind of a, wait and see thing. We've got a lot of issues we're trying to work out when we return to in-court hearings, distancing. Can we force people to wear masks? What if they refuse? But we are doing, as Karen said, as much as we can through WebEx, because we can join in defense counsel, prosecutors, the defendant, and and we can do that with outlying jails and so forth. So we're looking forward to this transition, I guess. But that's about all I got there on that. Thank you.
Great. Any questions for Karen or the judge from the council?
Not me.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, Mayor.
I just want to comment about the court. We went through this year and really scrubbed the court's budget to try and bring it in more in line with it being self-sustaining. And we really did do a lot of cuts. Karen did a lot. We eliminated the entire upstairs, and that cut out a lot of costs. The court is really running, I'll say efficient as far as financial goes. And that's why she's having such a hard time finding a place to cut, because it really is running very efficient. And we really did scrub the budget. She didn't mention, so I will. My understanding is that the state is now going to be raising the amount that we're going to have to pay on our share of fines, or their share of fines, I should say, and not allowing us to increase the fines. So that's a hit that the court's going to have to take too as we go forward. So we keep getting squeezed, but the court they are doing a great job and they are running very efficient. I just wanted to make that comment for the record.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I had a question.
Okay.
One of the items that I noticed that was kind of high was for interpreters, and I'm assuming with WebEx and decreases and court hearings, that will decrease over the next few months until August, correct?
Yes, it will, but we by law have to have an interpreter for every language.
Right.
Yeah, so right now it's quite low because we haven't had court for 2.5 months. You know, with a lot of the stuff I'm looking through, the witness and jury fees, the prisoner transports, the interpreters, all of that we haven't been able to utilize because we haven't had court. So yes, that is why it's down right now. But when we do start on June 1st, that will be something that we could potentially it would go up. And we actually do have Spanish speaking days, and we do have interpreters come, and those would start on June 3rd. So we do have 2 days a month where we have people who speak Spanish, and they would be coming on those days. So we would be paying an interpreter for that.
And then do you guys pay an addition or the same fee, I guess, when you guys do WebEx, if you have to?
There's no fee on WebEx.
But for an interpreter to come on, I guess, yeah.
We would still have to pay. Yes, we would still have to pay an interpreter, even though they're not physically here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job, guys.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate all you do.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care and be safe.
All right. You too.
Thank you. Okay, now we're to library, to Kim Fong. Kim?
Hello. Good afternoon. It's nice to see all of you. And Julia Pearson is also here with me from the library. Well, not actually here with me, but on the Zoom meeting. So I don't know if you have any general questions about the budget, but would you like to just go through the questions at this point to start with? Is that the way you'd like to handle this?
Yes, that would be good. Thank you.
Okay. So on question number 1, we have an estimate. We're estimating that we have about $35,000 that won't be spent in the part-time employee budget for this year. So because we have not had part-time employees working since the library closed, but we may need those funds to help with buying additional e-resources, e-books, because people can't come into the library, and also preparing for opening the library. There's a lot of retrofitting that we need to do in order to do that, with signage and one-way aisle arrows and all of that stuff. So some of that money may be spent on those type of things, trying to get touchless doors and those type of projects. So that won't be spent on employees, but it may need to be spent on something else.
Okay.
Number 2, we have no employees using CARES. Number 3, we could cut our travel and training costs to maybe $5,000. We are required to provide a certain amount of staff training for library recertification every year. So we can't totally not train people. We have to have a certain amount in order to keep our certification. That's with the state. Number 4 is not applicable to us. As you told us, we didn't have to worry about that exercise. And then number 5, we do not pay overtime currently, or are we planning on paying overtime in the future? And then the only CIP expense that we have is our HVAC system. And we have that money in there on a yearly basis, and we roll it over every year because we know that our furnaces and air conditioners are old, and they have been slowly dropping, where we've had to replace them. So we just keep that money in there. If we need to replace a unit, then we have the money there, and it's just a backup. We don't intend to replace everything all at once. It's just as they go out, we replace them. And I should just mention there are 16 units in the library. So it's a lot of units, and they have been slowly dying, and we just keep replacing them as they die. And then other than that, number 7, don't really have any other concerns unless you have questions about anything.
Questions for Kim? All right, I just have a comment. I think you guys are wonderful, and I really appreciate what you do because, I love the library. So,
well, thank you.
Hopefully soon this will be over and we can get back in it. So anyway.
Right. And we're doing what we can, of course. We're doing curbside service for people. So that's one way that we're able to get people some materials. And our ebook use has, of course, skyrocketed during this time. So a lot more people are trying out that service too, which is a great thing. So we're doing the best we can in the situation to try to provide folks with things, but it is hard, and we miss people being in the library.
I bet you do. Any other questions or comments for Kim? Okay, I guess you're free. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're at information technology. Robert White.
Hello.
Rob, available. Oh, there you are. Welcome.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see all of you again. It's been so long.
I know.
So, page, if you want to turn to page 36 on your book, or I can put that up on the screen, whichever you want.
Oh. Okay, would you put it up on the screen since you have those skills?
I can do that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Can you see that? No?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So, where we're looking at this year, the first question that you had is to review the budget and what amounts do the department directors feel can be unspent at the end of the fiscal year, and it's to be specific. I've outlined four for the IT and 6 accounts for GIS. We feel we can probably return back about from the overtime budget, the travel and train, because all of our conferences have been canceled and the funds have been returned. We can return about 7,000. And then in the software budget, we should be able to return about 10,000. And then also in professional services, we feel like we can return another 5,000. So on Ryan's division, the IT part of it, we can return about close to $25,000. And then in the GIS, we have similar accounts that we've highlighted. Professional services. He's returning some money from the supplies and small equipment. Together, they should be able to return about $18,000. So altogether, we should be able to return about $43,000 into the fund once the end of year. It's really difficult for me to project on software maintenance because we have a lot of bills that come up or invoices that we receive near the end of fiscal year, because that's when they start or end a lot of the contracts. And so there could be additional funds left in that area as well. So that's what we have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In the CARES Act, we did not have anyone that needed to take any sick leave or anything like that. The RT department did not have anybody on the CARES Act. But if there was any additional questions, Robin should be able to answer that. And then in the budget for next year, we have about $9,000 that we've budgeted for. We do not have any certifications that are based on travel, but as you all know, that in IT, the industry changes, almost daily. We do rely on the conferences and some of the training on those conferences to assist us with gaining knowledge for our software, upcoming releases, how things are affected, and what we can look forward to as far as in the new releases. And so, for us to cut that, it is difficult, and that's where a lot of our reliance is on those conferences and training. So, we would like, if we could, keep that in the budget, and then that way we can, we can continue on the training. On question 4, you asked us to decrease the budget by 4%. As you know, we cut $190,000 out of our budget already, which was 23%. Adding the additional software, we can probably give another $10,000 for this next year. Reducing all the overtime, we can do that. We're just going to have to provide comp time for our employees, and so that's what we'll do with that. And then professional services, we feel that we can probably give up some of those funds to help reducing it by 4%. So taking the additional funds of $21,500 on top of the $190,000, I've reduced the budget to 26%. Do you have any questions there so far?
I don't. I know you're trying your best, and we really do appreciate that. It's tough times, let me tell you.
And that's a lot, huh?
Do you have any questions, Council, for Rob?
Just want to compliment him on that. That's a lot. I know not everyone can do that, so that's quite a bit of savings for us. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
So because of the overtime and that we're removing that from our budget, was I talking over somebody? Okay, sorry. So question 5 was analyze overtime, determine if this item can be decreased. Like I said, we can remove that and we will, but we have some very large projects coming up. The pavilion that's being built in the parks, we own the fiber in there, and that's all going to be buried underground. We're going to have to resplice it, and our people will have to come in on the weekends to switch that over. Overtime, mostly anything that's performed on software upgrades, patches, is all done on the weekends because we need to stay up. Obviously, IT, we stay up 24/7 for public safety, the police and fire, and also for the power department. And so, a lot of times, a lot of our work has to be performed on off hours. And so when that happens, we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be gaining a lot of comp time. And so then I'm going to not be full staffed quite a bit. And so that's going to affect us. And so if service levels, agreements, SLAs could be affected by it, I'm not saying it will be, but we do have to look at that. And so, that's kind of where we're at. And then we already met with the CIP, and we've cut that all the way down to just 2 projects, question number 6. And if you want to go to page, or I can go to page 190, hold on here, or 90.
Can I cut in real quick before you go on to something else? So, Diane, is that okay? A subject that you brought up about the overtime?
Sure.
Rob, just so you know, and I'm speaking for me, I'm sure everyone else will agree, but I'm speaking for me. We don't want you to, for the overtime, we're not looking for you to risk services for others or not having enough employees to cover because you're doing comp instead of overtime. So I just want to make sure that's not my goal, and I don't think that's anybody's goal, but I want to make sure you knew that.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
I want to, it's scary that he just said what I was thinking, but I agree with it.
Okay. So if we go to page 96 here, if you look on that right there, the capital improvement, we reduced that down to just 2. We're going to do the Microsoft Office. We're going to go with the government on that. That will put all of our email and exchange will go online, and so we'll have an unlimited basically storage, and we'll be in compliance with criminal justice information systems. And then the second one there is the 2-factor authentication, which is once again we have to have that in order for us to comply with Utah criminal justice information systems. And that is 2-factor authentication is really verifying that this is the person logging into the computer by having the 2-factor there. And so that is required. That's really all we have as far as capital improvement is those 2. So we've cut all that out. And then let's see now. It says discuss any other concerns. Well, I've been online listening to you guys. I'm gonna turn the share screen off if I can here. Hang on a second. Hello.
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
And I know this is, we're going to review all of this in the midterm as well, but has there been, for any training purposes or anything like that, gone online? Have you guys seen anything versus a conference that has come online? Is that something that your industry is looking into moving in the near future during COVID-19 or?
I think how the mayor has said is like things are fluid. And I think that's really still true when it comes to IT. In a lot of training, we can do online training. And at the conferences, they have what are called breakout certifications, where you can actually go to these classes, and in areas that that we have or support, we pay for support for, we can get certifications. I know that they're talking about possibly putting those online, but you still have to, believe it or not, pay for the conference in order to get the classes. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. And so, at this point, there is a lot of talk of training online, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. And so hopefully that is something that we can, do in the future. One of the major conferences that we missed this last year is the Tyler Conference, when our entire software for the city is through that company. And so I don't know if they're going to reschedule that or not, but hopefully they do.
Okay, any other questions questions?
I'll make a statement on that conference, and Diane will totally agree because she's one that's brought this up several times. But that conference you're talking about, you suffer if you're not going to something like that because of the I can't remember the word we call it. Always call it the where you're getting other ideas from other cities.
Right.
Oh, Diane, I know that word and I can't say it. Networking. Thank you. But networking, that's huge to get ideas from other cities. That's where a lot of things get changed for the better. So
it's true. And you also have an opportunity to meet with the developers to discuss, the needs for the city and the direction that we're going. And so it just, those conferences are just really, really important. Esri, Ben's division, traveling to that and the changes that happened there. Those are just really good conferences for us. But all of the questions as far as the other concerns that I have, you guys have answered as I've listened online. So I don't really have a lot of other concerns. Like I said, just keeping in mind that my staff does work on weekends quite a bit. And we just want to make sure that we provide service for everybody, and we can continue to do that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rob. Any other questions for Rob about the budget? Okay, we really appreciate what you do, and stay safe.
Thank you. It's good to see you guys.
Take care.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Brenda.
Okay, I'm back. Finance and administration, let me just share my screen again. Oh, there it is.
What page?
1 second. 25. So in answer to your first question, which is how much are we not going to spend? Right now, I am looking at approximately 16,000. Oh, actually, that's after allocation. Approximately 30, let's see. Utility billing, let's do it this way. Finance department's going to save $4,000. Our budget is pretty small. Most of that will probably be in travel and training. The treasury is going to save $36,000. He's got a weird line in there from last year's budget, and I don't know where it came from. I got in the budget halfway through. His miscellaneous on page 28 is $27,000, and so he's not spending that. He's spent 1,000 of it so far, and utility billing is going to save $71,000. None of that will actually help the general fund. That will help the savings in the enterprise funds. And the recorder's office is going to save, by my estimation, about $20,000, and about 12 of that will help the general fund because it gets allocated out. of the $36,000 that the Treasury is going to save, 1,800 of that will be saved by the general fund. And the finance people, which is where I'm budgeted, they are allocated out 50%. So we'll save the general fund about $2,000. Non-departmental, I went through their expenses, and it's entirely possible that they will save about $162,000. We've done some things. I don't know if you guys don't spend a lot of time in the break room, but we stopped supplying coffee for the Keurig machine. That saved a ton of money. We also went from Mount Olympus to one of those filter systems. Murray water is great water, so we just filter it a little bit because a lot of people don't like chlorine. And that's saving us a couple $100 a month also. So those are some of the things that we'd already done before even COVID hit. So I think non-departmental will save about $162,000, depending on what COVID expenses hit and whatever other things happen in the next month and a half. Your second question was travel and training. I have a CPA license, so I need 80 hours of continuing education every 2 years. And if I want to get government-related continuing education, I need to go to conferences, and I do some online training through the GFOA. In fact, their whole conference went online. I did not sign up for it this year because we were busy dealing with COVID. In a normal time, I plan on going to the national conference and the Utah conference, which is in St. George every year. And then I have my senior accountant and my controller alternate which conferences they go to. And then there's some payroll conference that my payroll person goes to. That is held locally. I think I will possibly skip the national conference next year, which is in Chicago. That's a really sad thing, but I've never been to Chicago. But I think my travel and training, I can get away with $5,000 for me. The treasurer, he has certification to maintain. To get his training, he needs to attend the State Treasurers Conference and the annual Public Treasurers Academy, and his minimum cost is $1,500. Utility billing, they have no certifications, but they do have 5 people, and I want them to be able to do some online training through Tyler. And I have a $500 budget in there for that. That's $100 a person. I think that would probably work pretty well, but I would like them to have some opportunities to do that. And the recorder, both Jennifer and Brooke, the purchasing agent, have conferences they need to go to related to being a recorder and related to purchasing and following the state guidelines with purchasing. So their minimum necessary would be about $4,000. So that's what our travel and training minimums would be. For question number 4, where would I cut 4% out of the finance budget? And we can go to the finance page. I think I shared my screen with you. 4% of the finance budget. I'm on his. Hold on one second. I got to get up to mine. Finance. 4% of our budget is $1,000 of our $26,000 budget. And I would just cut books and subscriptions and by $500 and dues and membership by $900. It's very important that we keep our memberships in the GFOA and the UGFOA, and so that we can keep up to date on what's going on and changes. In fact, the GFOA has a financial first aid thing they've put together so that you can go in and read about how to budget in crises and various other things. It's been very helpful. That would save the general fund, by the way, $538. treasury, to cut his budget 4% would be $1,492. And I would do that by cutting his bank fees a little bit, his books and subscriptions, and his dues and memberships. He doesn't need books and subscriptions. And I think if we half his dues and memberships, I should have put these in the right order. If we half his dues and memberships, or leave it there. Yeah, we're just going to get rid of his books and subscriptions completely. This is a new department, so I am still playing with his budget. And if you look through the treasury budget, we have already cut some of his stuff down to where it should be based on his history. Okay, 1 year history, but I think I'm pretty good at that. Utility billing, you said they could be held harmless. Most of that budget, by the way, is actually due to mailing of statements. And so I couldn't even find 4% when I tried. The remaining budget is just so small that from their total budget, I tried just to see what it would be. The recorder's office, I think she's up here. Their amount that we would need to cut is $2,300, $2,379. We would have the books and subscriptions and drop the travel and training to $2,000 to $8,000, which would allow them to do the certifications and get to the conferences they need to go to, but would save their $2,300. Question number 5 on overtime. We do have busy times of the season, and we have very small overtime budgets. I think right now I budgeted $1,000 for finance, treasury $500, and utility billing. I like utility billing to be able to train after hours so they're not interrupted with phone calls, and that's what they're doing now. Lots of people like money. Some people like time. I like having the flexibility of letting them decide whether they want time or money. So that's why we have the small budget. Of course, it's all pre-approved. They don't get to just say, I worked 44 hours last week without asking us first. And there has to be a very good reason why we're on overtime. So if you cut it, then I basically would just only be able to offer them comp time. And in general, just so you know, there is a limit to how many hours of comp time people can accrue. That is due to limiting our OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and our liability for accruals, because we have to have a liability out there for anything that could possibly be paid out when someone leaves, and that is comp time. So it really helps keep our amount of dollars that we do on payouts, and that we control the number of hours we allow out there. Right now it's set at 80. And if you have over 80 hours, you get paid the dollars. And we have no choice. If people work over, we have to pay them. That's the law. So we either have to pay them with comp time at time and a half, or we have to pay them the time and a half. So,
Brenda, is that due to salaried over hourly?
Only hourly gets comp time.
Okay.
Salary has no, you work extra, you're just lowering your per hour. Well, we do get that other benefit that if there happens to be an afternoon we need off, we can take it off without having to take hours from vacation and stuff. So
I found it works.
Yeah,
I found over the years, the older you get, the more you want time.
Yes. Yes. So those are the answers to 5 questions. We have no CIP. So in general, the only thing that really changed in our budgets, I did analyze. I did for utility billing request one additional staff member. We would like to create an assistant customer service supervisor. Part of those duties would be to help Karen supervise the department, and part of it would be to be the lead person in our dealings with IT, the lead trainer, the person who works out all the trouble tickets, that kind of a thing. So they're going to have more specialized knowledge than the customer service representatives that their whole responsibility is answering the phones and running the software and doing the billing. So we would like to add that one person. With this new software that's coming on, it does take longer to do stuff. If you've ever done green screen, you know, once you learn it, it's a long learning curve, but once you learn it, it is the fastest thing ever. But point and click is slower. The new software is a little more cumbersome just because of that. It's not a 20-year-old software like our old stuff. The other thing is we are getting more dense. As you know, even when people do single family houses, they put them on smaller lots and stick more of them in there. And we are getting more and more apartments, condos. So we're getting more customers, and apartments tend to move in and out a lot. So that requires more people to answer the phone and help them move in and out. And yes, they can do it online, parts of it. The new system might even do more parts of it online, but most people actually signing up service, and it requires a person to be on the phone with them, talking to them. So, and they do a great job. So that's why we are asking for that. That is 100% paid for through the utilities. I did talk to Danny and Blaine, and they were okay with it. We probably won't be hiring for at least a month or two, and maybe even 3 into the new year to see where the COVID thing is going, but we would like to have the position available. My hope would be that we would approve the position, move the person, open up the position, and then leave the CSR billing editor position empty for a while. So that we can get somebody trained up, but then just leave. I'm 100% anticipating that this position will be filled from within.
How many people do you have already, Brenda?
In utility billing, I have 5 people currently on staff. All 5 of them are on the phones at any given moment, depending on who's calling. Karen, the supervisor, is the last one who gets called. There's a hierarchy. I do have one person out right now on CARES leave. So we are doing it with 4. And it's tough. When somebody takes a day off, it's tough because there's only 3 of them left. And but they're handling it, and hopefully they'll be back soon.
How they transition to the new software and everything? Is that what the need, like mostly what the need is for a new person, is to help and catch up? And
part of that is the need there is the new software takes more clicks, and it takes more time to get people signed up, to get their deposit in. It takes more time if they're moving out, it takes more time moving in, getting it back into the landlord. And I think the Planning Commission just approved that subdivision off of Winchester that's got 18 new homes or 20. And then there was another one down on Commerce that they're talking about that has 238 residential units. If you just keep multiplying that as we do that, we're getting a lot more calls, even though we are going more online for a lot of things. And there's just only so much they can all do. And when one of them goes on vacation or two of them need to be out for some reason, it is just really hard. We have 3 people sitting there. And when one of them goes to lunch, we have 2. So
And guess what? That happens all the time. I know. I mean,
it
not with
happens
you, but
all the time.
with us, and everyone wants to cut, and I'm not talking about us, but everyone wants to cut in certain areas until you can't get through to find out your utility information. And that's a tough thing.
I actually think some of our customers who never call us, who have been, because we had customers call us when they were 2 days late because of the COVID thing, that worried that we were going to shut them off because they've never dealt with us. They got signed up and 10 years later, they're having an issue. And I think they were surprised that they actually got a live person. You get an initial one that says if you want to make a payment, and then you just hit one number, and then the next thing you know, you got a live person. So some of them are surprised, and I like that. I like that surprise. So do you have any questions about what I did? Raise some of my lines. I reallocated some lines between the departments based on what they've been doing. So do you have any questions about my budgets?
Any questions, council? Guess not. Thanks, Brenda.
Thank you.
We appreciate all that you do to help us.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, Brenda was our last. Before adjournment, is there anything else that you want to put on contingency other than what we have already at this point? Council?
I don't.
I think anything that's required by the state in terms of certifications or anything like that, we should consider to be put on contingency. I know that came up quite a bit, but just determining from each department which ones are from the state and then addressing that at another time. I don't know if that's something that we can look at.
Rosalba, I couldn't really hear that question.
Yeah, I didn't hear it either. I'm sorry.
Neither.
Hold on. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. All right. The one thing I kept hearing over and over again were like certifications or certifications from state, depending on their field and what they're doing. If we can maybe put those on contingency and ask specifically, you know, which ones they would be from each department, so we're not cutting them completely on their training and travel budgets, but that those certifications kind of be a little bit more clear on where to not cut them is what I'm saying, that we can put on contingency.
Jan, did you? Jan?
What? Yes.
Did you get that? Did that? Okay.
So what you want is to review all the travel and training departments?
I want to review what is a requirement for them to be certified and to stay certified. That is a requirement either by the state or their license. So
Okay.
So that be a contingency item.
I have made some notes on that, but I think if you want to discuss it again, then you might need to ask them to give us in writing exactly what they need. Because I've made some notes, but you know, a lot of them kind of went back and forth. Well, we need this. Well, we need that. Well, and so it's hard to take notes on exactly what they needed for certifications. And maybe I could just shoot an email to the mayor's office asking them to come back with a list of exactly what they need for certifications. Would that help?
Yeah, I know that it came up quite a bit. I know like some departments were really good about saying exactly what it was and that it was required. But if we can just kind of get, you know, hey, in this department, X amount of employees need to be certified. And this year, because I know for 2 to 3 years, I know some people do 40 hours one year, some people do another 40 the next year. So it's still very vague. And I think if we can find out if there's a list that they already have ongoing, if it's something that we can then reevaluate and mid-year and say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and approve the additional money depending on where we're at. I think that was my biggest take from it was.
Okay.
So could I just ask a question here?
Hello, Doug. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah. I think what we're going to need, if you want us to give you some direction on that, we're going to need you to define what is certification. Because I'll be sending over to Jan what the departments have provided with us, but I've noticed in reading through their information that they define certification differently. And so that's going to be the problem is defining what in the department's minds are certifications. So for example, the attorney's office, in order for them to maintain their license with the bar, they have to get so many CEUs. Same thing true with our water department employees. In order for them to work in our water department, they have to get so many CEUs. But other departments are defining certification differently. They're saying that, for example, the Parks Department, they're going to say that we have to send our employees to these conferences, not necessarily to get CEUs, but to be able to get training on how to use different pieces of equipment, but they don't issue CEUs. So, we'll give the information that Jan requested over to you guys, and you can read through it, but I think you're going to have a hard time distinguishing between what the departments say they need versus I don't know what definition you're looking for with CEUs.
Well, I just don't want to cut into their budget, and that's something that they needed for ongoing training, whether it was CEUs or not. I mean, the biggest factor for me I would hate to lose an employee because we weren't giving them the proper training in whatever department that they needed.
So I would ask a question. Are you thinking that the departments are asking for money for things that are not training? I mean, what's in their budget is what they feel like they need.
I'm just saying I don't want to cut it, is what I'm saying, or understanding a little bit more what they need. Because I know some were very vague and some were very specific.
Right.
And I get it.
That's because it depends on how you define what is needed and what's not. So if you want to define it only as this is required for you to have your job, then a lot of departments will eliminate their training budgets entirely. So for example, Parks and Recreation, they don't have to have CEUs to be a park maintenance employee. A street department employee doesn't have to have a CEU to be a street department employee. So that's the risk that you run when you say we only are going to pay for credentialing.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
If I might, I think this is a good exercise to go through with our department heads because they're taking a second look at their budget. But I think we trust our department heads. I think they're going to be able to maybe trim some, maybe not. But I think the budgets are pretty close to bare bones as it is. I think looking at it and going through it's a great exercise, and I'm sure we'll find savings. But at the end of the day, I think we've got some of the best people in the world, and they're running their departments quite efficiently. So I think we continue on like we are and see where else we can find savings, and then get a total of the money that's coming back that they're not going to spend. And that'll help us make a decision there too, I think.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Okay. Then I guess we will be adjourned until tomorrow at 12:30.
Thank you.
Take care, you guys.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.